This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It's a manic Monday. It's February 3rd, 2014. I'm Doug Hagmann, co-host along with my son, Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, a couple of investigators playing radio talk show hosts. And folks, you're about to hear 3 hours of unbiased and uncensored news, information, and analysis thereof. I really do believe we bring to you the news and analysis of the same in 3D. And that's kind of our branding, if you will. We look well beyond the headlines, the bylines, bring you the news behind the news. Folks, for the new listeners, we broadcast live every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern on the internet. Our home base is HomelandSecurityUS.com. We're also simulcast by the Christians United Broadcasting Network. There, you can tune us in at the Hagmann and HagmannReport.com. You have to spell it all out. Thanks, everyone, for joining us tonight. Thanks for your belief and your trust in us as together we walk through this minefield of current events. Joe, welcome to the studio. It's been a very intense day. Intense is the word, isn't it?
Yeah, we had a interesting day. We talked to quite a few people. Just to give you guys a insight into how our week is going to go. Tomorrow we are going to have Stan Deo on, as we do every Sunday or Tuesday in the second hour, and
he's going to be talking. By the way, he's going to be talking about the
fake snow scandal stuff.
Right, exactly. Giving you the real scoop, the scientific analysis of this snow melting stuff.
Right. In my opinion, there is the snow's not fake. It might be irradiated, but that's about the extent of it. So he'll be with us tomorrow, second hour. Wednesday and Thursday, I will be absent from the show, but my dad will be here on Wednesday with Jim Garrow, and on Thursday by Paul McGuire. Then Friday, we're having the Super Bowl halftime breakdown by Nathan Leal, who has done so much work already within a 24-hour period to break down the symbolism that was in there. I mean, we talked to him today, and so much that was missed, and I haven't, I kind of half-watched it live. I didn't go back and rewind, and my dad put up an article on HomelandSecurityUS.com about the message that was behind the little children at the beginning of the halftime show to prepare, but that was just the tip of the iceberg when we talked with Nathan. So he'll be on Friday to give a comprehensive breakdown of that with videos, pictures, and the whole 9 yards. And then Sunday, we're doing a special show with Steve and Pastor Langford.
For Sunday's show, folks, just as a heads up, if you have anointing oil, some of you do, or just olive oil, have that handy. That's all I can say about that. The information about that show will be forthcoming. I'll be updating the right-hand side of the website with the show schedule later on tonight for your accessibility. Now, tonight, as the program unfolds, a couple of things. We're going to be talking about the Super Bowl, not in the depth of that Nathan Leal will be talking about it, but just from, I'll say the perceptions of Michael Arevna. And, of course, Michael Arevna from our program, RevelationNow.net. We'll be going over a couple of things. He accurately predicted on the 31st of January the
winner.
The winner, correct. And there's some occult-ish symbolism. And folks, the reason we're going through this, I just want to mention this, and then I'll give it to you, Joe. The reason we're looking at this, everyone I've talked to says, man, I can feel it. Things are coming. Things aren't right. I can feel it in my spirit. Well, if we look at the playbook, and I wrote this very, very short article for our site, HomelandSecurityUS.com, and for CanadaFreePress.com, asking the question, prepare for what? That's the title of the article. I left it open. I left it open for people's interpretation. I did that for a reason. I wanted to see the responses. I really was interested in people's responses. I didn't fill in any of the blanks. I left that to you folks. And it's interesting because I got just a ton of emails from all across the world about this. Many people didn't see it. Many people didn't see the prepare. Many people saw it. Many people wondered about the context in which it was given. And I think we're going to get into that a little bit as the program unfolds. And one more thing before I toss it back to you. Once again, I want to tell you, I'm working on a couple of different projects, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very excited about all of these projects I'm working on. I'm not going to, I'll be letting you know, one project I've been working on now for the better part of a year. It's coming to fruition. The other project I've been working on for a little bit less, well, a lot less than that. However, that should be coming to fruition this week as well. But as a marker in time, once again, I want to mention the word Subud to you folks. S-U-B-U-D. This is an extremely important thread. It's a golden thread that when you pull on this thread, it touches many, many parts of Obama, the creation that is Obama, Loretta Fuddy, who perished in the plane crash, or as a result of the plane water landing in Hawaii. It goes into Obama's mother. It goes into the Geithner family. It goes into the CIA. This is huge. Just remember, Subud, you're going to be hearing more and more and more about this. Or, if you prefer, Subud, depending on where you're at. Marker in there. Marker in time. Just as a heads up. Last time I did this, there were 3 or 4 articles that came out about it. But I just want to let you know that there's more to this than you can ever imagine. But there's a lot of research, a lot of deep rabbit trails that we've gone down. And Joe, I was on Coast to Coast last night for the news segment. It was coming interesting.
Yeah, you were on at the beginning of Coast to Coast. Apparently, Alex+Jones was on, and later on in the show. Was
that last night, or was that the? I thought you said he was on.
What is last night? Sunday? Yeah, last night. And this is I just got this from a friend, and apparently you and Steve Quill were mentioned quite a few times talking about the Iranian threat and the inside threat posed by sleeper cells from Iran.
Right, and we'll be talking about that later in the program.
Yeah,
I got to tell you, man, 1 o'clock in the morning for 3 minutes of airtime, that's, wow, that messes up your sleep pattern.
It was last night, too. Alex+Jones was on talking about that with you guys, talking about you guys, and you were on at the very beginning, and from what you told me, it wasn't, it was kind of an awkward situation, when you connect to a show, and you hear a question asked, and the person's trying to get you into the queue in time. Apparently, you guys had some issue. You didn't hear part of the question that you answered, the first question.
Yeah, how would you like this, folks?
I would have said, what? Did you repeat that, please? But you just went along with it.
Well, yeah. I was surprised. How it works behind the scenes, normally, you're brought into the, I'll call it the queue, and you can hear the programming. And you can hear the network streaming. In other words, you don't hear what you hear on the radio, but you hear the network streaming, the core network. And then without the delay, then you hear, for example, what I was supposed to hear was George Norrie ask me the question, and then I respond to the question.
Right.
Well, how it happened last night was I was brought on at the end of the question, so I only heard the last 5 words of the question without hearing the entire question. But I kind of knew the question, but I wasn't sure. So I answered it blindly, hoping that I answered the question that he asked. So it was it was bizarre. It was just a bizarre situation. It happens sometimes. So people think, boy, you guys, meaning us, Hagmann and Hagmann, you've got this rinky-dink operation. Well, it happens in the best of operations sometimes. And would you think of I've been still getting a lot of great email from John Wells' program, John B. Wells. What did you think of that, Joe?
I thought it was fantastic. I actually went back, and something I don't do unless there's something I want to hear or, listen to again. A lot of times with Paul McGuire and Nathan Liao, Pastor Langford, I'll go back and listen to certain parts of the show we did. But I went back and listened to the first hour with John B. Wells, and my wife actually joined me. I think his voice kept her listening, but no, she thought it was really good too, and we thought it was great, and can't wait to do it again on his new show. Oh goodness, I just had a
Caravan to Midnight.
Caravan to Midnight.
And by the way, speaking of shows and other things, I'll just hit this real quick. We're going to be going, we're just making plans right now to go to the Orlando Prophecy Summit. Both Joe and I will be there. I believe we're 95 and 96% certain. That's going to be March 28th through 30th in Orlando. We'll be loading up our Volkswagen Beetle bus and driving down there to go down and meet with Russ Dizdar, L.A. Marzulli, Jonathan Cahn, Gary Stearman, and others. So
Paul McGuire.
Yeah,
you said Jonathan Cahn, Chuck Misler. You're going to have Doc Marquis.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to have just tons of people down there. I mean, this is going to be. There's some people that are not on the list that aren't going to be able to make it, but March 28th through the 30th, I believe,
right,
down in Orlando, Florida, we are going to be there as.
I don't think we're going to be staying
attendance.
at the. Yeah, I don't think we're going to be staying at the Renaissance. I think we're going to be off property. However, we're going to be attending the summit.
Are we going to rent a Winnebago and sleep there? Maybe we could sleep in the parking lot of the Renaissance.
Remember the movie, remember Christmas Vacation? That there's that there's an RV.
I traded my neighbor for his house.
But anyway, I can't wait to meet them, and just to let everyone know too, we've got a kind of a full dance card because at some point we're going to be meeting up with Steve Quayle and Pastor David Langford, independent of one another, of course. But we've got to, what we're trying to do, folks, is trying to expand and act as nexus points, nexus people for the greater good. I mean, this is not something, boy, I'll tell you, I don't like traveling at all. I really dislike traveling. You and I had to do this 18 months, almost 2 years to New York City every single day. Every week, that is, to travel. And it gets old after a while. You wake up, you don't know what city you're in, and I mean that. Sometimes you have to think for a minute, what city am I in? And it's, or what hotel am I in? And, but we're going to be doing that for a very specific purpose, and that's to create to get people together. And perhaps when we're in Florida, we can see Rick Wiles as well. But just to kind of give you an idea, folks.
This isn't a traveling, the way we did for work, to go work. This is traveling to go relax and meet some wonderful people and have a good time. So we don't have to worry about the actual drive being like it was when we were working.
Yeah. I was going to say, well, this is not for vacation. This is for a specific purpose. But yes, you're right. Compared to what we were. Yeah, compared to sitting in back alleys in New York City, this is going to be like a vacation.
My birthday's on March 28th. This is the first day of the conference, so I'm going to be having a vacation if nobody else will be. So how about that? Well, getting into the Super Bowl, as you said, Michael Arevna's site, revelationnow.net, from his article on the 31st of January, which took place days before the Super Bowl, says this in his second sentence. This is going to shock many football fans, but it will not be Denver Broncos. Talking about who's going to win the Super Bowl. You're muted.
Here's why it's important, Joe, I think, and ladies and gentlemen, just very briefly. We are given, this is how I feel, and folks, I don't know if wherever you're at mentally and spiritually, and it doesn't really matter, nor does it matter where I'm at, but as you look at how things are progressing in this world today, and I think we're going down a path that's at this point perhaps irreversible. But we have to look at the playbooks of the very people who are taking us down this path, at least for an understanding of where we're headed. because I think they've got to tell us. There's some twisted moral code of conduct by these people that they've got to let us know. And sometimes they don't just come out and say, hey, this is what we're going to do to you. They say this in a very obscure fashion. But they also communicate among themselves, kind of like the secret handshake of people, of secret societies. It's like an insider handshake. So if you know the code, if you know what if you've got the code sheet, then you have a better understanding of what's coming. Because when my article was prepare for what? Well, it would be nice to know what we are to prepare for, or what they are saying that we should prepare for. Now we know what we need to prepare for as Christians and as people, as warriors and as watchmen. But what are they saying amongst themselves? And that's why we are looking at this as an investigative analysis. This is why. Why is it important? Why aren't we talking about, something more tangible? Because we're looking at this, analyzing this from a point of view where, Joe, I think if again, to take a look at what these people are planning and what these people are talking about, all the stadiums are on ley lines, magnetic ley lines. We know that, intentionally built there. MetLife Stadium being no exception. And of course, they believe, it doesn't matter what we believe, but they believe that gives them a certain amount of power. They engage in ritualistic behavior. We watch it, or when I say we, collectively, I'm talking about people watch this. They believe that the involvement of others gives them a certain amount of power. So let's go through this a little bit more. As you said, Michael Arevna said, it's going to be the Seahawks. And he said, I'll tell you why, and it's not personal. It's based on spiritual clues. Well, there you go. First of all, the Denver Broncos are the favorite team because they are led by, of course, Peyton Manning. And many say that he's the best quarterback, except for only one Super Bowl ring on his fingers. Now, if we look at this explorative journey, if we remove ourselves from the statistics of football and focus only on the trail of spiritual breadcrumbs, then this will help us align the signs, symbols with the desired outcome of the occult-driven manipulators. And this, folks, this is important to me. And Joe, jump in here any time, too. But from the occult perspective, this whole Super Bowl ritual is about capturing the energy and directing it from the realm of spirit. Everything we experience in our physical dimension happens in spirit first. Now think about that for a moment. Everything that we experience in our physical dimension happens in the spirit realm first. This is the whole purpose of the ritual in the first place. It's like calling specific players off the bench into the spiritual realm. This is the purpose of the symbol in the realm of spirit. When you see a symbol in the physical world, you must realize they have a counterpart in the spiritual world. Now, this counterpart has energies and is responsible and can be released with a specific intent in mind. Think about this in the larger sense. And one thing the intelligence insider that you've all heard on this program, one thing that he always says to me, when we discuss things about Syria and about Libya and about Arab Spring, oftentimes I'll say something and he'll correct me. He'll say, and Joe, you've heard him say this. He says, "You're not thinking big enough. You're not thinking big enough. The agenda is bigger than that. The whole plan is bigger than that." And this is what we have to do. We have to think bigger than what we're used to thinking. Now, Michael Arevna studied the last two Super Bowls, 46 and 47. He writes in his latest article where he says, "I realize the colors are a part of this alchemy and are important for the evocation of the ritual." Now, he says, "In my Super Bowl 48 piece, I correctly correlated the colors of the teams in Super Bowl 48. They were predicted as tin blue versus blood red, and almost spot on. The tin blue represents, now this is important because as above, so below in their belief system. The tin blue represents Jupiter, and the blood red represents Mars. I thought I was off base when Denver filled the slot, but Mars is actually known as the orange/red planet. So we have the alchemy there with the colors on par with the occult cosmic recognition. And this is important, again. Now the question is, who must win to evoke the right energies? Rebner writes, this is a tough one, and I'll admit I'm learning as I progressively mature in my understanding of these rituals. In ancient Rome, a sacrifice of the best horse was made to Mars. This was made to evoke the energies for the returning army of the Romans and to ensure a successful harvest. The Denver are this best horse. Can we say sacrifice here? And it's interesting because when we were talking, Joe, with Nathan Leal, isn't it interesting what he said? And I did catch the game, parts of the game last night. I'm okay with football. But he said, Nathan said that the Broncos were playing like they were almost drugged, yeah, you know.
Right. And I watched the Super Bowl. I was at a friend's house. Me and my wife went to a small party with just two other friends and their significant others, and we had a nice little meal, and we were talking and you know, kind of watching the Super Bowl. It was one-sided, so we really weren't, you know, focused on the game too much, but it definitely, there was, when I was paying attention, there was some things that were going on in the game, and it just didn't seem, it's been a while since I watched football. I used to be a diehard football fan, and Dad, you can attest to this. When we used to go out of town for private investigation work, I would make our hotel stays, or where and when we stopped on Sundays, I would try to base them around when the Buffalo Bills played, so I could watch them. And
drive me nuts, man.
Yeah. The last 2 years, I've just kind of given up on sports, as there's learning and much more important things than that. But I was a huge fan. Now, I have not, as I said, I didn't watch any football really this season. This was the first game I actually sat down in a room where the game was on from beginning to end. But it definitely, there was a lot of things that struck me as odd, especially during the halftime show, but just even from the opening part of the game to how things went, some of the referee calls, there's a lot of...
Well, one thing that kind of really, I was in a position to see the beginning of the game. Did you see Joe Namath?
I saw a picture of him today in that big fur coat.
Oh, man.
It's better than, what was it, maybe 4 years ago. He was drunk and he got interviewed on the sidelines and tried to give this ESPN lady a kiss right on camera. But, yeah, I saw the...
All right. Well, that's amazing. Yeah. The coat thing was just something else. But the really why we're looking at this, and I have to stress this because, you know, the American, the Arab Spring and how this was planned. And, of course, you look at NASA, the things that are going on and have gone on with NASA, the occult symbolism of NASA. You go back into the Roman times. You go back into the various, the pagan gods, Isis, Osiris, Nimrod. Tom Horner has written extensively on this. Apollyon Now is one of his books talking about ISIS. And isn't it interesting? We have ISIS, the U.S.-backed terrorist organization located in the western portion of Iraq that is opening a front with Syria, okay, in the southeast portion of Syria. So looking at what is taking place, you might say, well, what is the Super Bowl or the halftime show or the Olympics or any of this has to do, what does this have to do with geopolitical affairs? Because the people who are running things are basing their actions on certain cosmic events, certain dates, certain... you know, for those listening to this, maybe new to this, I'd turn me off, okay? I mean, I'd say, man, this guy's absolutely out of his mind. But as you progress and study the game plan of the enemy, I think you'll see, if you hang with us, I think you'll see how this all fits together, how this all ties together. For example, the naming of the International Space Station, and of course you've got the docking of what's taking place or what has taken place in the past in the skies above the Earth, as above, so below. There are rituals associated, and I'm trying to be as vague as possible. When I say vague, I'm trying to be as academic here as possible, as simple as possible to avoid going down any specific rabbit trail at one time. But if you look at what's taking place, I think you'll see that there are rituals, satanic Luciferian rituals taking place all over the place, right in front of our nose. And that, to me, is important to understand. Now, I'm going to just back up here a little bit because I think it's important as well. Let me go back here to the very opening part of the ceremony here. Scrolling up on my notes. Super Bowl 48 having satanic omens. The Illuminati. Let me just set this out right here. The Illuminati, those servants of Satan who hold the reins of our world, our system, they frequently use major media events, especially those related to sports, to communicate their plans through very subtle means. We saw this last night. They use signs, they use symbols, they use song lyrics, even the outcome of the sporting events to convey satanic messages in a way that is deniable. You can deny this. You can say, man, you're just nuts. They use equivocation, which is a form of communication that is ambiguous and very evasive. This permits them to deny that they had any intent to convey a message that is offensive to many, or which would be able to prove their guilt, culpability in some evil plot, and to call us absolutely nuts, fruitcakes, nutcases. Now, the London Olympics were filled with such symbolism and communications.
The what Olympics?
London.
Okay, it sounded like you said something way different, but all right.
Okay, well, I should take the sock out of my mouth here. That was a worldwide showcase where the hidden hand that guides this world can send forth subliminal or over or covert messages that only a remnant will perceive while remaining hidden to the majority. Isn't that a great system if you think about it? Now, we've seen in recent times where satanic messages or the agenda of Luciferians have been contained in halftime shows of the Super Bowl and others. The presence of darkness has been readily apparent. And if you look at this, the Super Bowl, even there was a black mass performed by Madonna and CeeLo Green, just 2 years ago. Do you remember that? Madonna, very significantly, if you recall, that she was dressed in black throughout that performance, being a reference to the Black Madonna or the Black Mary, which Ignatius of Loyola, the founder of the Jesuits and first superior general of that order, claimed to have been inspired and devoted unto. Now, this information does tie in with other things as well, especially information that delves into the significance of the Vatican, who appointed the first Jesuit to the position of Pope. But the Super Bowl halftime show typically lasts how long, Joe? What do you think? How many minutes?
The Super Bowl?
Halftime show.
30 minutes. 45?
How about 13?
Okay. Since when? I mean, regular halftime in the NFL is 15 minutes.
Well,
are you talking about the actual
performance?
Okay.
Now, that number, of course, is known to mankind as one of ill omen. Now I'm going to put a link up to some research done at a website called Parables blog. But because I think this is important to understand, the Super Bowl halftime show this year, which featured Bruno Mars as a lead performer, was 13 minutes in duration. Now, this is not mere superstition that causes mankind to view the number 13 as evil. The Bible reveals an evil significance to this number as well. As to the significance of 13, everyone's aware that has come down to us as a number of ill omen. Many superstitions cluster around it, and various explanations are current concerning them. Now, unfortunately, those who go backwards to find a reason, very rarely do they go back far enough. And this also speaks to not thinking big enough. The popular explanations don't, so far as we're aware, go further back than the apostles. But you've got to go back to the first occurrence of the number 13 in order to discover the key to its significance. And you've got to look at Genesis 14:4, where we read 12 years. Well, you can just go to Genesis chapter 14:4. I'm just going to stop right there, because 13 is you'll see from Genesis 14:4 that 13 is associated with rebellion. Now, hence, every occurrence of the number 13, and likewise every multiple of it, stamps that with which it stands in connection with rebellion, apostasy, defection, corruption, disintegration, revolution, or some kindred idea thereof. The second mention of 13 is in connection with Ishmael. There you can find that at Genesis 17:25. The number 13 is linked to rebellion and rejection by God or of God. One of the songs Bruno Mars performed during his 13-minute show is titled Locked Out of Heaven. Did you see that? Locked Out of Heaven. The song is regarded by many as written as a sympathetic song for the devil. The Bible tells us that
they're just misunderstanding it. Locked out of heaven is it's not about the devil. It just means that somebody's locked out of heaven. I mean, come on.
Well, yeah. Yeah. The lyrics of Bruno Mars' song speak of being locked out of heaven. You're right. And the Bible names only one being that has experienced such a judgment, and of course that is Satan, right? Revelation 12:7-9. And there was a major war in heaven. Michael and his angels were waging war with the dragon, and so on.
I want to read from a book that somebody sent me named Connections, and this has a breakdown of the number 13. So the number is representative of rebellion. The very first use of the number 13 in the Bible introduces us to this concept. 12 years they served Charlemagne, and the 13th year they rebelled, Genesis 14:4. Witches' covens worldwide have usually consisted of 13 members, and the Bible tells us rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, 1 Samuel 15:23. 12 is the number of perfect government, but 13 is one too many. It's also the course of very popularly thought to portend bad luck. This superstition goes back to Judas, who is one disciple too many, in a sense, if we were to look at Jesus and the other 11 as perfect 12. 13 and 11 are both numbers of rebellion, 11 in the sense of falling short of the glory of God, and 13 in the sense of an extra agent being present. In the Gospels, we see that God wants the numbers set straight, that the divine order of things includes numerical consistency. Jesus and the other disciples without Judas made a perfect 12. Now, that is a breakdown from the book Connections by Glenn Carpenter.
Very good. And I referenced that Genesis scripture earlier. But you're right. So if you look at this, and once again, the reason we're looking at this, using the Bible as part of the key code here, which I believe that we have to do, we can gain insight into what's being planned. And if you look at just look at the lyrics of "Locked Out of Heaven," and I'm not going to read the lyrics, but the bottom line here, you can see that this is really, and whether you want to believe it or not, it doesn't matter. See, that's the other thing too. Oftentimes people will say, well, believe it. It doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't matter what I believe, folks. It does matter what they believe. It's their operating principles which are driving their actions. It's not ours. It's theirs. So just like someone, for example, if you're investigating a murder, the murderer has a motive. It doesn't matter if you believe in the legitimacy of their motive. It's not yours to believe. It's their thought process. If you want to look at this from a purely investigative point of view, which I've seen so many people dismiss things because they don't believe it. They don't believe in that other people believe it, or they don't believe it exists. Just because you don't believe it exists doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Just trust me on that. But and again, I'm not going to go through the lyrics, and we're not going to really weigh heavy into this all program. I think it's important.
Mark Dice did a video breakdown, 9 minutes. It's on Before It's News, and I'm not sure the title of it. I caught it earlier today here in the studio, and it's a 9-minute breakdown that points out some of the more areas of that halftime show and the Super Bowl in general, and kind of gives a wrap up of the last 2 years.
Oh, thank you for telling me. Okay, I wasn't aware of that. Well, okay, so just to kind of run through the rest of it, as you look at this, you see the song that Mars performed. There are pyramid symbols being displayed prominently on the floor and in the background, as well as pyramids being formed by the moving spotlights. The pyramid, of course, we know, is a symbol used by the Illuminati and the various other groups to denote the kingdom of Satan. All right? Now, aside from the debauched lyrics and the performance that glorifies sexual immorality by Mars, there's another message that was incorporated into the halftime show. This is where I picked up on this. Of course, we saw this giant hand come in and turning the MetLife Stadium. Go ahead.
Yeah, I watched the Super Bowl live, and I missed what you wrote your article on.
Well, frankly, I missed it as well. Or when I say missed it, I saw it, but I missed the significance of it. And I was at my desk. I was preparing to I was doing some research for Coast to Coast, and then I checked my email, and there was a couple of people that sent me emails about it and saying, "Did you see this?" And then, of course, W had sent me an email saying, "Hey, this is important. It just happened, and you should pay attention to this." Well, after the giant hand that turned the MetLife Stadium, the hand that functioned as a DJ making music, Satan is the Pied Piper, of course, deceives the entire world into singing his songs and dancing along to the music. This includes even the children who are viewed as innocent. And this is where I picked it up and said this Pepsi, or at the end of the Pepsi commercial, the camera switched to the floor of the stadium, where this group of children standing below stage holding hands and singing. They're singing to the chorus of Bruno Mars' song titled Billionaire. And if you look at the lyrics of Billionaire, wow, does that have some pretty profane language in it. So there was just, 4 or 5 lines, 4 lines, I believe, that they had sang. And the last line was, "I swear the world better prepare." And they repeated the word prepare 3 times, at which point the light behind them, the visual, the digital signboards behind these children had displayed the American flag and variations of the American flag. And of course, I'll just read you the lyrics that they sang. Very short here. "Oh, every time I close my eyes, I see my name in shining lights. Yeah, a different city every night. All right. I swear the world better prepare, prepare, prepare." That's what they sang. And as they said prepare, from 42 to 44 and 45 to 45 seconds to 47 seconds, 2 seconds each, the words prepare flashed on the screen behind them.
Well, we tell people to prepare all the time. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, well, the selection of this song chorus, now this by Parables, this Parables blog, and I totally agree, is merely a ruse to introduce us to the word prepare, just as the children sing this word. Once again, the word prepare appears in large red letters behind the children. The problem I have is the contextual significance of this. What exactly are they trying to tell us? And of course, 3 times the word prepare. Is there any significance in that?
Yeah, they're trying to tell you to prepare. Prepare for what? Who knows?
Well, prepare is the only word from the song that appears, revealing in it that in this word is the true message that Satan or the Luciferians wants to communicate to the world. So what are we being warned to prepare for? And that was my question I left hanging out there. If you go back into, and I'm going to defer the rest to Nathan, but if you go back into this, one individual, again from Parables, one individual says that the answers revealed in a commercial aired during the Super Bowl that also featured children. Satan has chosen children as innocent and naive messengers to proclaim to the world what he is about to do, meaning what the Luciferian leaders, this New World Order, the globalists, the Illuminati, what they're going to do. Following the Super Bowl 48 commercial for the Maserati automobile. Or they're following that prepare thing was the commercial for this Maserati model of an automobile. It was out of character, strangely, for a car commercial. It featured a child reciting a poem that was pretty dark and foreboding, by the way, and attended by images that are similarly dark, equally dark. The commercial glorifies the darkness and ends with the declaration that something is about to spring forth that has laid hidden in the shadows. If you go back, you can find this on YouTube, folks, and you can find a transcript that does include the words, "The world is full of giants. They've always been here, lumbering in the schoolyards, limping through the alleys. We've had to learn how to deal with them, how to overcome them. We were small but fast, remember?" And it goes on and on and on. It's pretty creepy. And then we walk out of the darkness, out of the shadows, quietly walk out of the dark. Isn't it interesting? The video ends with 2 phrases appearing on the screen. The first phrase relates back to the words of the children singing at the beginning of the halftime show, "Be prepared," or "We have prepared." And then the second reveals what is coming next, "Now we strike." So, as you can see from the screenshots that I have up on my article, as well as you can find the other screenshots, we're looking at something perhaps that's about to happen. We're being told by the Illuminati that their plans are about ready to go forth. And look, again, I'm not asking you to believe this. I'm just saying perhaps, and I believe this to be true, this, I believe, is what they believe. And if they're holding the bag of money, if they're holding the reins of power, if they're holding the networks, all of them, if they're holding the media communications, if they have the power, we should be paying attention. And if they're using, for example, the King James Version of the Bible as part of their playbook, then I think we should be paying attention. And I do believe that we have in front of us this very important message, or this series. I don't think we should be quick to blow this off, I guess, is what I'm saying. I think we should be mindful of what they are trying to say to us. And even if there is no action necessary at this point, let's just be mindful of what might be coming. And what might be coming is something perhaps that some level of deception, some level of some ill wind. We know an ill wind is coming. We know this is coming, right? We know something is coming. Look at Revelation, the book of Revelation, and maybe in the context, or look at this halftime show, as well as the past couple in the context of Scripture, of the book of Revelation. And even if you were listening to this and you're not a Christian, because I know we have non-Christians listening to this, then look at it from a historical perspective. Look at the history of the pagan worship of the Roman Empire. Look at the current power, the 13 bloodlines of the Illuminati. Look at them and look at their belief structure. Look at who they're worshiping, and then look at the Super Bowl halftime show and other the Olympics and other such ritualistic ceremonies through the context of those that I mentioned. I just believe now 10 years ago, I would have blown this off quicker than, like you couldn't believe. I would say you're absolutely nuts. You're talking out of the wrong end of your anatomy. But I do believe that there's something here. I'm not trying to convince you. I'm just trying to put things in perspective. If you look at what's going on in Syria, if you look at what's going on in Iran, if you look at the geopolitical situation all across the Middle East and really globally, if you look at the economic situation, then I think, because it's going to affect all of us, from the geopolitics to the economy, there will not be anybody that will be unaffected by what's coming. I don't know if we can say with precision exactly what's coming, but I do know that we can say with a degree of assurance that there will be something coming, that something is coming down the pike that will adversely affect our lifestyle, whether it's a collapse of the economy or whether it's a sudden war in the Middle East, which will collapse our economy. It's coming. So let's what we're trying to do is decode, or at least identify the information, offer it to you in the best analysis form possible. And that's why I think this is important. So we do know that the powers that are, the Illuminati, the Luciferians, the satanic ritualistic people, have used these types of events in the past, and they're still using them, and this is why we discuss this. So with that, Joe, I'm just going to...
We'll get a more comprehensive breakdown from Nathan on Friday, much more comprehensive breakdown. And
much more coherent one as well.
Yeah. Moving along here, as we got about 10 minutes left before the top of the hour break, we had a stock market, I was going to say crash, but not really a crash. It plunged 300-plus points today. The Dow Jones U.S. stocks were hammered on Monday with benchmark indexes falling through key support levels after a gauge of factory activity disappointed, heightened concerns about the economy before Friday's monthly jobs report. Stocks had wavered ahead of the report that had U.S. manufacturing expanding at substantially slower pace in January, driving overall factory activity to an 8-month low. A report like this scares people ahead of payroll number on Friday, she said. Andrea Garcia Amaya, global market strategist at J.P. Morgan Funds, who added that the report's soft new orders component was of particular concern. Now, the stocks ended up $326.05 down, leaving the Dow at 15,372. And, with the high being at 16,588, not too long ago, seeing it down over 1,000 points is pretty unsettling. And we know, that this is we're going to see swings in the stock market, but we saw last week, over a $300 down day, a $200 down day. Then it was up, I think, $48 on Friday. Now the first day out of the gate, again, down 300-plus points. And the article goes on to say, we had such a strong year last year when there was complacency among investors who questioned whether they should take some profits or see if their future were further reason to invest in the U.S. with trouble in emerging markets, providing the initial catalyst for the steep selling in recent sessions. Mondays.
But Joe, I'm sorry to interrupt, but everyone's telling us don't worry about what's taking place. Don't worry about the 300. Don't worry about this.
CNBC. I'm reading. Right.
Go ahead.
To let people know.
But the mood is, and I'm just going to toss this in because I think right now this is a good context here. Remember what Aldous Huxley, Brave New World Revisited, back in 1958 said: under a dictatorship, the big business made possible by advancing technology and the consequent ruin of little business is controlled by the state. That is to say, by a small group of party leaders and the soldiers, policemen, and civil servants who carry out their orders. In a capitalistic democracy such as the U.S., it's controlled by what a gentleman by the name of Professor C. Wright Mills has called the power elite. So even back in the late 50s, the power elite were the subject of discussion. This power elite directly employs several millions of the country's workforce in its factories, offices, stores, controls many millions more by lending them the money to buy its products, and through its ownership of the media of mass communications influences the thoughts, feelings, and actions of virtually everybody. Now go ahead with what you were saying. Just keep that in mind as you're going through this. Go ahead.
But just to give a rollout, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is down $326, change of 2.8%. Negative change of 2.8%. The S&P 500 had a negative change of 2.28%, and the NASDAQ had a negative percentage change of 2.61%. So across the board, we are seeing the shares falling, and it says the dollar edged lower against other global currencies, and the yield on the 10-year Treasury note fell to a 3-month low, that's important news, and I wish I could tell you more as to why it was very important, but we need Vion or Mr. Shorjan to come on because...
What did you just say that was very important?
The 10-year Treasury note fell to a 3-month low.
Yeah, okay.
At 2.58% is where it sits now. And it goes on to say, crude fell from $1.06 to $96.43 a barrel, even though it's still over $3.50 at the gas tanks. Gold jumped $20.10, or 1.6%, and that's the stock report for today from the CNBC. We will see how it goes tomorrow, and I don't know how many people expect this week to be volatile. If like last week, we saw a little volatility, and it kind of evened itself out. But just expect the unexpected in the financial market. Whether dealing with housing prices. I went back this weekend and I watched that Ken Peters Vision of the Tribulation, and at the full video of that, which is 2 hours plus, at the very end he gives 8 or 10 very specific things to look out for, and this was taped in 2005. And one of the things he said, which I never saw before, was the judgment will fall on the mortgage sector of financing. Now, this was
why though? Why would that happen that way?
I don't remember exactly why. I was doing dishes and I was listening to the thing, but I had to go back and rewind it to see if I heard him correctly, because in 2005 you hadn't had the mortgage crisis yet, the housing bubble. But we know that this is going to be a volatile year. It's going to continue to get worse. I think the Dow has seen the best of days, and if it does get back up above what it was at its height, 16,500 plus, it's going to just have a flash crash, in my opinion. But do not put your hopes in the stock market. Do not put your wealth in the stock market.
Goodness, no. Goodness, no.
No.
I deal with people on a daily basis almost, it seems like.
Do you?
Who well, if not personally, then electronically, I suppose. That might be a better word. I try not to come out of my blast chamber here.
I was joking because you don't talk to who do you talk to all day, but we know who lots of people are.
Yeah, but the people are saying, well, the Dow Jones Industrial, or the Dow, for example, is up, or the Dow is down. It took a $300 hit, but you have to look at it in a certain perspective. But here's reality. Reality is having a house that you can't sell. Reality is wanting to buy a house, but you can't get a mortgage for that because of the mortgage rules change. Reality is trying to cash a $2,000 or $3,000 check, and you can't get the money out for a few days, or you have to give a reason. Reality is paying $3.39 a gallon for gas and having to pay that and drive for a living. That's reality. Reality is having to work 3 and 4, 5 jobs collectively in your family just to pay the mortgage and pay the bills. Reality is not having enough time in the day to do all of that and to pay attention to what's going on around you. That's reality. That's where you and I are at, folks. And it doesn't matter if you're listening to this in the United States, Canada, Europe, or wherever. If you are in that situation, it's almost like nothing else matters because you're too busy trying to put food on the table and pay the mortgage and pay the bills and keep the lights and heat going. That nothing else matters. And you see, that's how we live. When I say we, I'm talking about Joe and I and you and me, and we're all in this together. We have to work for a living. Well, it'd be nice to be able to sit and, put your toes in the sand, wouldn't it, by the ocean and live the good life. But the fact is, you've got responsibilities. Reality is worrying about taking care of your mother or your father or your family member who has some sort of physical impairment and having to deal with this Affordable Care Act. That's reality.
Yeah. And meanwhile, we have a report out of the European Union, and this is not just for the European Union. This is being reported here, but this happens in the United States, I would say just as much, if not more. Corruption in European Union is breathtaking. Corruption in the EU has hit breathtaking new levels and has drained more than $160 billion from the economy, according to BBC. And that is from, people who are policymakers involved in the it's bribery, all kinds of different levels and crimes of corruption and theft from the people. And from the different countries, Poland 15%, Hungary 13%, Slovakia 14%, and the most prevalent instances were healthcare. Some were bribery, some were, well, I guess that'd be bribery payments for other favors.
This is going to take us, Joe. This is going to take us into the second hour because we're going to talk about Sochi, what's going on in the Ukraine, and what's going on in Europe, and why in the world it matters.
Yeah, and Congress took more free trips in 2013 than in any other year since Abrahamoff reforms. The tally 1,800.
I'm going to hit you with, instead of the Nerf bet, I'm going to hit you with
Abramoff. How's that?
With the thesaurus, a dictionary, that is. I'm sorry.
Abramoff.
You want to go for a fourth pronunciation? That's all right. No, I got to tell you, that's stealing. To me, this is stealing. I don't know about how you feel about it. As I said earlier, everyone has got to work multiple jobs to keep food on the table and the lights on.
And 87 free trips totaling over $6 million. Now, if you had the president's trips in the amounts in there, you're talking over 20-plus million.
It's crazy. And see, this is royalty. Folks, you look at what we discussed about the Super Bowl commercials, about the Illuminati, the symbolism. These people believe themselves to be royalty, and they are living like royalty on our backs, on the backs of our sweat and our labor and our tears and our blood, sometimes literally. And we're going to expose in the second hour exactly why, how this is happening, and how the world events are all taking shape to make 2014, at least the rest of 2014, a year in which we will definitely remember. Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann Report on this, the third day of February
13. Now for a quick word from our sponsors.
Yes, I should mention, ladies and gentlemen, as I wrangled, I snuck out for a cup of coffee real quick. Folks, I just want to tell you, portions of tonight's broadcast are brought to you courtesy of Audible.com. Audible.com is a leading provider of premium digital spoken audio. Folks, it's a consumer service. We subscribe. I subscribe. I use it. This allows users to choose audio versions of your favorite books. They've got a library of over 150,000 titles. Folks, all you have to do, go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, click on the link on the right-hand side that says Audible.com, or if you choose to go directly, all you have to do is type into your browser address bar www.audibletrial.com/CFP radio. That'll take you to our page. There, you can get a free audiobook and a 30-day trial by signing up at that address. It helps us stay on the air, and frankly, it's a great service. It really is. This weekend, I was doing some research, and I was doing some other things, and I had they've got 1 second after, for example. I had a book playing in the background. It was a pretty intense book, and I'm not going to disclose the title for reasons that will become clear later on. But, folks, if you're not listening all the time to either radio, information, or entertainment, you're not learning or you're not taking time off. I subscribe to it, and I think it's a great service. That's audible.com. Thank you for listening. Now, Joe, before the break, I was mentioned kind of briefly about, well, last night when Tom Danheiser called me and asked me to be on Coast to Coast, we were talking about Iran. He was talking about Iran. He was talking about the possibility of attacks here in the United States. Folks, have you heard about this? The threat of attacks, cells by cells here in the United States. Joe, have you heard anything about this in your research? I found it rather interesting. Are you paying attention to me? Do I have to throw a Nerf bat at you?
Oh, no, I'm awake.
All right.
I'm awake.
Have you heard about the potential for attacks by Iranian-backed groups here in the United States?
Only from certain guests.
Okay.
And you.
And me. Well, George Norrie last night asked me, that was a basic question, are the threats credible? You know, and ladies and gentlemen, I'll ask you this open-ended question, rhetorically, of course. What do you think about attacks by Islamic cells here in the United States? So what do you think about that? Have we moved on now from September 11th, 2001, from potential Islamic cells, terror cells in the United States, operating independently of anyone else?
I have a audio uploaded from a news report about Israel, and we can play this when we get to this part of it. But Israel risks losing support from its main ally. This over the Iranian deal.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because here's something. I was doing some research, and folks, you talk about a complicated chessboard, this geopolitical chessboard. Right now, my answer last night, I was limited to, I think, 2 minutes with George Norrie, but my answer right now is, with respect to the threat of the Islamic terror threat here in the United States, is very simple, not without official U.S. backing, with the exception of those people who have been brainwashed into the Islamic cult, the Islamic death cult. That's not to say all Muslims. I'm saying this Islamic death cult that a lot of people have come out of that do present a threat, like Nadal Hassan, for example. Now, we can talk about that in a number of different ways, context and what have you. But what I'm saying is, I don't believe at this moment in time, although I believe the threats are credible, but I believe that they're more complex. I don't believe that they're unsubstantiated by, or they're not without support. Here's one thing, folks, that just is not on any Western radar. Al Arabia, or actually this came from the Middle East part of Al Arabia, quoting the Kuwaiti newspaper. You're not going to find this in the Washington Post or the Washington Times or the New York Times. But Fred Hoff, a senior U.S. State Department official who works on Syria. He's a former U.S. ambassador. He revealed that Iranian officials and U.S. officials have been in private meetings for years. But within these private meetings, the Iranian officials told him that Iran is not in conflict with the United States. Now think about this. They're not even in conflict with Israel. But they believe, Joe, listen to this, their main threat is coming from someplace else. Not the United States. This is Iran talking now, not the U.S. And ladies and gentlemen in the chat, you feel free to toss up your answers here. And the first one will get a Hagmann and Hagmann polo shirt. No, I'm just, by the way, those are in the making. Okay, here's the question. Now pay attention. Those in chat, pay attention. Fred Hoff, former U.S. ambassador, in meetings with Iranian officials, private meetings. The Iranians told him that Iran is not in conflict with the U.S. or even Israel, but rather they believe blank is the main threat. Any ideas, folks, in the chat room? We'll go first in the chat room. Any
Camels?
No, it's a country. Come on, buddy.
I'm just joking.
State. Well, that's close. There you go. Uncontrolled opposition. Saudi Arabia. You got it. And if you've been listening to what we've been saying on this program for how long? For months, you'll know that Saudi Arabia is really against, or is really considered to be a threat against Iran. Now, you also know that Saudi Arabia is a proxy of who, Joe? Of the United States. That's correct. So, if you look at this, what are they saying? Well, it's kind of doublespeak, isn't it? If Saudi Arabia is actually a proxy of the U.S., and they're saying, well, we don't really consider you guys a threat, but we consider Saudi Arabia a threat, what are they actually saying? It's a roundabout way of accusing us. But everything you see happening in the Middle East, that sandbox, that tinderbox right now, is choreographed, is being choreographed. Everything is a fight by proxy. You've got Saudi Arabia being a proxy of the United States, but we have sufficiently, through Obama, angered them and pushed them into the arms, and are pushing them into the arms of China. Now, that hasn't happened fully yet, but we're pushing them into the arms of China. Now, this is where you need to get like scorecards out and dance cards, and you got to look at all the players here. But for sure, what is taking place is this unholy alliance between the United States and Saudi Arabia. That's the old alliance. Now Saudi Arabia is being pushed into the arms of China, as we are seeing, along with Israel. Okay, here's the alliance that's taking shape. China, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Israel. On the other side of the coin, you've got Syria, Turkey, Iran, and Russia. Now, with respect to Iran, everyone's looking to Iran as being the flashpoint in the Middle East. That's not going to be the case. It's going to be Syria. And here's why. Remember we've been talking about this? Well, the Kuwaiti newspaper reported last week that, let me grab this, let me pull this up here because I want to be very, very exact when I say this. Okay, it's absolutely essential to first understand the bigger picture. Second, keep in mind what is taking place. What is taking place is a proxy war. It's all about proxies. Iran is at the front of the line. Iran is a high-value chess piece for who? For Russia, and working for them for their ends. Now, Iran is being worked as a proxy for Russia, as is Syria. You've got to think about this in the same way as North Korea. North Korea is being worked as a proxy for who? For China. This is all, folks, this is all about the future. This has nothing to do with it's not about what's on the news today. It has nothing to do with what you're seeing on the news today. It's about the future of power in the region. Who controls the energy highways and byways, as well as who controls the region in terms of geopolitical power in the region. It's about a globalist agenda, nothing less, and it's about the future. It's about the next 50 to 100 years. This is how they are thinking, how they're positioning themselves for the next 50 to 100 years. Now, this is where this Al Arabia comes in and the Kuwaiti newspaper comes in. What's interesting, if not key, is what was reported in that foreign press, but nothing in the U.S. Now, Hoff revealed that Iranian officials in private meetings told him that Iran is not in conflict with the United States, remember what I just said, but rather believes Saudi Arabia to be the main threat considering its perceived tampering in Syria. Going back to Syria, Hoff said that Iran believes Saudi Arabia to be Iran's real enemy inside and outside of Syria, not Israel. Now, Russia favors the survival of the al-Assad regime. That's the crux of the matter. Iran sees al-Assad as a key pillar. Tehran sees him as the cornerstone of the Iranian regime. If he falls, everything that Iran has planned will fall as well. Iran believes that overthrowing Bashar al-Assad would be a test before leading the bigger operation toppling the Iranian regime. That's why Iranian officials reject any possibility of any political solution in Syria and say, hands off. Now, here is key. Here's something key, folks. What's coming up on the 7th? It's the opening of the Olympics in Sochi. Folks, here is what I've received from my intelligence sources. This is plural, but certainly the most vocal of all, the one you heard last week, is it's this. Right now, Putin has got his hands kind of tied behind his back with the Olympics. This by Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia says, don't be going into Syria and crushing and bombing things and bombing the opposition here. Hands off ISIS. Folks, remember ISIS, the Islamic terrorist group that is formed in Iraq. This is a big part of what's taking place. And ISIS, of course, interesting acronym for that particular group. You think it's by accident. It's not by accident. Note the name in the context of the globalist agenda. But, folks, here's the key. After the Olympics, you better buckle your seatbelts and put your seat backs and tray tables in their full upright locked position, because Putin is going to come out, and when he does, he's going to come out with the gloves off and swinging. Putin's response against ISIS in western Iraq and southeast Syria has been tempered at this point due to the Saudi Olympic terror threat. But when that's over, it's going to be a different ballgame. You're going to see a lot of things happen in Syria and in Iraq. And see, when these things happen, you're going to see a blowback to Saudi Arabia. It's very possible you're going to see Saudi Arabia bear the brunt of terrorist attacks or of attacks, nation-state level attacks. It's very possible that you're going to see shipping of oil, the Strait of Hormuz, all of this after post-Olympics now, at the hands of Putin by way of proxy nation states. This is when it's all going to break loose. You notice that things are not going well with the Ukraine. You know, it's funny. I see on the forums, Joe, the rioting in the Ukraine. Well, what's that all about? Well, the Ukraine wants to break away from Russia and become part of the European Union. That's a very simplified version, of course. But everyone, in fact, I think some of the conservative websites, some of the other websites were laughing because they show up with those colanders on their heads. Remember those spaghetti strainers on their heads, the metal spaghetti strainers? Some had buckets, some had other medical.
There was some New York official that was sworn in with a spaghetti strainer on his head, and it was part of some
I didn't
belly
see
button
that.
alien religion, more or less standing for freedom from religion. But no.
Are you being serious?
I'm being serious. They have some weird, oh goodness, what would you call it? Mission statement. It's actually what the anti-Christian, bigoted Mickey Weinstein tries to do with his Freedom from Religion Foundation. But this is just more of a statement of we don't take things seriously as far as that's concerned.
All right. Well, the rioters in the Ukraine, it's interesting because some of these, even conservative websites and forums will come out and kind of poke fun and say, look at these people, ha ha ha, they've got these strainers on top of their heads, and make fun of this. Well, do you know why they're wearing these?
I'll tell you in a second.
Is it a fashion statement?
Yeah, I'll tell you in a second.
Well, I'll tell you.
No, you just looked at me funny when I said about aliens. But go ahead. What did you find?
Well, here's what I was told, and told by multiple sources. There have been reports that the Russians have been using technology against the rioters.
So they put strainers in their head, did not...
I'm talking about the type of technology that hurts your head, causes headaches, causes various other types of neurological... And I know, you know what,
no,
I know it's funny.
I'm not laughing at what you're saying. The strainer is part of the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. That's the name.
Says who?
The guy that was sworn in New York. It says it's something of a Fox pass for politicians to be sworn into public office while wearing kitchen appliances, so this must be a first. Christopher Schaefer,
all right.
town councilman from New York, was sworn into office with a spaghetti strainer on his head.
Man.
The strainer comes from a purpose. Schaefer is a self-professed Pastafarian and minister of the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster.
Right. Okay. That of course, is parody, but... Look, what I'm talking about is as a for real deal.
Okay, how about this Checkman wears spaghetti strainer on his head?
Yeah, I know.
For religious reasons.
Okay.
The Flying Spaghetti Monster Church.
Okay. But no, I'm serious. They're wearing things on their heads, the metal things on their heads, is because of reports where these rioters, and I'm being totally serious about this now. You had the parody, Joe, I'm being totally serious. There have been reports where the Russians were using non-lethal force, but stuff that makes that causes intense ringing in your ears and headaches, and to against the rioters, and that's for real. So you can make people like the conservative websites, some of them, or the liberal websites can make fun of these people, but really this is for real. There was a real purpose. Now I don't know to what extent it has been taken beyond that, but the fact of the matter is it served a real purpose. And the other thing, look at the background. These rioters, look at the background, folks. You see Agenda 21 at work. What do I mean by that? If you look at the background where these rioters are, you're seeing people who are stacked and packed in urban areas that are through Agenda 21 like policies. If you want to know what America is going to look like or could look like perhaps in 5 years, 10 years, I don't know the timeline. Look at what's going on in the Ukraine. This is a very good example. Just imagine those high-rise buildings that we see in the back of the Ukraine protesters in the brownstones of New York. Folks, this is the intent of the globalists. Why do you think that there was this big push by everyone from really Roosevelt forward, get everyone into the cities. This is where it's at. You stack them, you pack them, you provide transportation for them, you keep them. It's almost like prison cities, like containers upon containers. This is what we're seeing. But anyway, the talks that are going on with the United Nations and with Iran, folks, this is all a dog and pony show. People know that nothing is going to be accomplished by this. Everyone knows, everyone at the highest levels know that these talks were not and are not going to go well. Now, in response to the Ukraine riots or the Ukraine revolt, what will Putin... Bear in mind, most of these people in the Ukraine are Muslims. From the stand, it's Muslims, 90 or the vast majority of them, not all of them, but most of them. Well, posed to me was a question by W, was this. If you're on a submarine, a nuclear submarine, how do you convince everyone, or how do you make everyone get off that submarine? What do you tell them? Submarine is leaking radiation. It's dangerous. It's a toxic environment. It's going to kill you. Well, use that same principle. The Ukraine wants to go and be part of Europe. Well, what is Putin going to do to keep the revolt down in the Ukraine? Of course, he will attempt to make Europe and even the West look toxic. That's going to help him with that Ukrainian problem. But back to Iran. Russia needs Iran. They're using Iran as a pummeling device, if you will. Iran is a high-level chess piece. This is all about who's on top. This is like a lover's quarrel in the end. Iran and Russia, they're both serving each other's interests. Iran has got Russia in the game because it suits their interests and vice versa. But folks, the bottom line is this. This game will change quickly and radically after the Olympics. It's going to be ugly. Russia and Iran are tied at the hip over Syria, and what we're going to see is you're going to see you're just going to see this whole thing break open after the Olympics in a big way. Mark my words.
Let's go to this audio from RT. Israel risks losing the support of its main ally.
Cool.
It's 6 minutes, but we don't have to sit through the whole thing.
Another spat seems to be brewing between the U.S. Secretary of State and the Israeli government. It all started after John Kerry expressed his concern over the lack of progress at peace negotiations with the Palestinians. Well, Mr. Kerry, who has been holding back and forth talks with both sides, said over the weekend that the status quo being maintained by Israel is not sustainable. And he also warned that many countries could seek to boycott Tel Aviv if peace negotiations fail. Now, this triggered an angry response with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, saying that any efforts to boycott Israel would be unjustified and counterproductive. Israel's Strategic Affairs Minister then weighed in, saying Israel cannot be expected to negotiate with a gun to its head. And the Economy Minister went a step further, calling on Israel's allies to stand up against those who try to pursue anti-Semitic agendas against his country. Well, there's been a public backlash, too, with some 2,000 Israelis gathering outside the Western Wall in Jerusalem last week for a prayer rally against U.S. efforts to broker an agreement. The two sides resumed peace talks last July. A deadline has been set for April, with Israeli settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem remaining a key sticking point. Let's now bring in Amir Oren. He's a senior correspondent and columnist for Haaretz newspaper. Thank you so much, Mr. Oren, for joining us here on RT International to discuss this. So, what do you make of Israelis' reaction, and especially the Israeli government, to Kerry's words? I mean, could they be overreacting?
Diplomatically, it makes no sense at all for Netanyahu and his government to try and fight President Obama and Secretary Kerry and their administration. But that is because politically it must make some sense. The target audience is the Israeli public as the deadline approaches for the Kerry outline, the framework agreement between Israel and Palestine to be unveiled, and because this particular framework is going to be palatable to most of the Israeli public, Netanyahu is aiming at his right flank. His political base within the Likud party and with other parties and groups to the right of it is against the Kerry paradigm, and therefore it all means that Netanyahu, rather than starting to lay the ground publicly for an acceptance of the Kerry proposals, is going to be actively working against them.
All right. Well, as we know, business and politics often go together, and some of the European businesses have already stopped or limited trade with Israeli businesses in West Bank settlements. why does that not concern Israel, or does it?
All right. The bottom line with John Kerry, these Israeli talks, and everything we're talking about is this: there is, folks, this intent, and it's a very aggressive intent for this two-state solution to be in place. And I think that was an important clip, because you're looking at this reaction by U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, who is again the target of criticism, both direct and indirect, by Israeli leaders and even Palestinian leaders. The fight here, or the intent, I guess we'll go to the globalist intent. This is to create a secondary state alongside of Israel. And folks, please understand this. Israel wants Assad. The leaders of Israel want Assad gone. Now, some people will say, Doug, that's not true. But if you go to the highest levels, the highest government source levels, trust me when I tell you that Israel will settle, or will, in place of taking Assad out, they will accept a two-state solution, or a second state, thinking, and here's their thought process, that we're willing to take a chance on Syria, because taking Assad out will cause this destabilization. Think, for example, think Egypt, think of Libya. They're thinking that Syria will implode, as did Egypt and as did Libya, but it's not. So they're saying, okay, go ahead and take Assad out, destabilize Syria. If you do that, fine. We'll agree to a two-state solution, because we know that that Palestinian state is going to be led by Hamas, and it would be easier to deal with than a nation state like Syria. The threat would be less. That's the thought process. Then throw Obama and even at this point, Hillary Clinton thinking about 2016, and Kerry currently, all saying, well, this is a win-win for all of us, because Hillary has got her designs, regardless of what anyone believes, on 2016, on the presidential bid. So what we have here is this movement, this geopolitical movement of chess pieces, considering the American politics and considering the Israeli politics, as well as the geopolitical aspect of the entire Middle East. The globalist intent is to recreate the Ottoman Empire and put everything back under, or as much of this back under, British control as possible. That's what this is all about. Okay, and I know it's kind of difficult to really comprehend.
It is a kind of confusing, convoluted situation, and it is a geopolitical chess match. On its face value is, what we see it as, the way Brzezinski wrote, the grand chessboard in his book.
Exactly.
And the book I picked up not too long ago, right here, International Community, A Goal for a New World Order. It talks about these. This book's from the 90s, early 90s, and it gets into a lot of these things about, I've yet to see a reference to a 9/11 style event. They do say that they need some type of, no, they don't say event, but they need some catalyst or some, there needs to be a new enemy created, a perception of a new enemy. And then they get,
that's right. And that's why, Joe, after the Olympics, it's so important, because you talk about a false flag, there's your window of potential opportunity there. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, they need a perception change, or a change. If there is not a real enemy that is coming to the forefront, then there needs to be at least the appearance of one. And they lay out, in this book, there's different quotes from different people. They also talk about the new role for the United States in this international community, and they get into a lot of disarmament talk, and this is right after the Cold War, so the Cold War is referenced in here quite a bit. But just to give you guys a brief rundown on the table of conflicts here, or table of contents. It should be called table of conflicts. Chapter 1, creating a new world system, the initial steps. 2, revising the world threat perceptions. That's what I was referring to. 3, the U.S.'s new world role. 4, recent comments on a new world order. And 5, the role of the international community. And then they go into different appendixes like the comments on international community, national interest and international goals, arms expenditures, and finally the new world order.
No, exactly. So we must, and I just want to really drive this point home. If there's ever a window of potential terrorist type of activity, well, not terrorism, but actual war by nation-state proxies, it's after the Olympics. It's after Putin has his hands untied and now can respond with the level of aggression that some might find very surprising. In Syria, I would not be surprised, folks, to see some sort of chemical weapons type of action take place in Syria with or
a deja vu event?
Yes, and this time a little bit more refined, a little bit more in such a way, having it sold to the public to blame Assad or at least a member of his extended forces. And then, of course, that would require international action against Syria. Now, that said, or the damage being done by ISIS and the advances being done through ISIS, by ISIS and related terrorist groups into Syria right now, they're using this window of opportunity to make advances. And believe me when I say this, Kerry went through in the first of the year saying, well, we're not going to do anything militarily to stop ISIS at all in Iraq. And of course, ISIS is the reformation of the group that was really heavily involved in Iraq. So they green-lighted ISIS to go ahead and do what they will into Syria. But folks, they could not exist without Western backing. And I'll tell you this: you watch Brit Hume on Fox News, if you do, and you watch Juan Williams, and who's that smiley guy that smiles all the time? William Crystal, and all of these. Look, it's not that I'm taking personal issue with all of these people, but you watch them, and Brit Hume has this air of legitimacy because he's this media guy. Okay, he's like the new trusted mainstream Walter Cronkite, almost Walter Cronkite-ish, this bastion of media who's saying, who's making statements about the Middle East politics. But when you really get right down to it, none of the people in the mainstream media are talking about the real core issues, that the United States is backing the wrong people. And Steve Quayle had, folks, did you see Steve Quayle's page here today where he had about the Christians being baked in the ovens? Did you see that, Joe?
No.
Okay.
I saw the title, but I did not click on the article.
Okay. Well, folks, I would urge you to read the link from Steve Quayle's website here, if I can find it, talking about the war against Christians. What is taking place as well, and this is important because this is part of the larger agenda. Christians are being targeted all across the Middle East, in Egypt, in Syria. In Syria right now, one of the things, now Assad has blood on his hands, but the fact of the matter is he did not go out and wage war on Christians. Morsi in Egypt did. With the taking out of Assad, it's going to be death to every Christian.
And Steve, Gaddafi did what he could to protect Christians. He goes away. It turns into Al-Qaeda Christian killing field.
Exactly. And this is all a part. And again, think bigger. You've got to look at the bigger picture because you're going to. Some of this could be attributed to, we'll say, through the mainstream media, well, this is a religious war. Well, how do you solve a religious war? You create the environment, or you say, well, we all worship the same God, and you repeat this over and over and over again. Muslims and Christians worship the same God. Well, that's not true. But if you keep hearing that, or if they keep spouting that untruth, people are going to start to believe it. So to really, and we see the Christians being slaughtered in the Middle East at the hands of the very people the United States is backing. You don't think, for example, Hillary Clinton knows? You don't think that John Kerry knows, or Obama or Valerie Jarrett know that everything that they're doing today and everything that Hillary Clinton did when she was Secretary of State was an act to exterminate Christians? Of course it was, and of course they knew. But this is all part of the bigger globalist agenda to create this one world religion. Now, of course, that'll get me on some sort of list, right? If I'm not already there.
Let me tell you, this piece in domestic news, on a different level of that thought process, panelist at Podesta, think tank on Common Core, the children belong to all of us. In addressing criticisms of the Common Core national education standards, a panelist at the Center for American Progress, a liberal think tank, said critics were a tiny minority who opposed these standards altogether, which were unfair because the children belong to all of us. The Center for America Progress was founded by John Podesta, the former chief of staff to Bill Clinton and now advisor to President Barack Obama. An event at CAP to promote Common Core on Friday, CNS News asked about the critics who say federal monetary incentives attached to Common Core is driving the states to implement the standards. Paul Revile, the former Secretary of Education for Massachusetts and a Common Core supporter, said, "To be sure, there's always a small voice, and I think these voices get amplified in the midst of these arguments of people who were never in favor of standards in the first place and never wanted to have any kind of testing or accountability, and those voices get amplified. But those are a tiny minority," he said. "An overwhelming majority of teachers are saying this is something that makes sense."
And this is one vehicle. Now, we talked about the geopolitical aspect in the Middle East and about the war on Christians. Let's bring it home. Let's bring it domestically. Common Core is really warfare on the domestic level, using our children as pawns in a global chess match, in a global chess game. You're exactly right.
Yeah, this says Common Core State Standards Initiative is a state-led effort that established a single set of clear educational standards for K through 12th grade in English language, arts, and mathematics that states voluntarily adopt, says the website. These standards are designed to ensure that students graduating from high school are prepared to enter credit-bearing entry courses in 2 or 4 year college programs or enter the workforce. And where are they going to work? As janitors at McDonald's? These standards are clear and concise to ensure that parents, teachers, and students have a clear understanding of the expectations in reading, writing, and listening, speaking, language, and mathematics in school. So I guess these Common Core math geniuses will go on to be bankers at Goldman Sachs with the 2 + 2 = 5 theories. Maybe
that was a good one. That really was a good one. Yes, and don't forget, when you take away, first of all, the funding for Common Core, and all of this, and you might think, well, geez, you go from talking about Syria and Iran and Iraq and the Middle East and the war against Christians to this. Well, if you got to take a few steps back and see how all of this is interconnected. This Common Core is, as I said, this is the war. This is the ground zero for the global initiative to take away our children and to, as you said, not only math, but to educate them in such a manner where they accept the well, I guess I really don't want to go down that road. I was going to say they accept the geopolitics or the history, the revisionist history through the state-led process rather than standards. you're actually taking, and in fact, this, boy, we could spend 20 programs on Common Core and probably should, but this Common Core removes the ability of parents and teachers to direct academic content. You see, it's going to have a standardizing effect on the educational choices available to families. What this is doing is this is kind of teaching the collective to think alike and not think for yourself or not think for themselves. The standards are incredible, and the standards are to impose Common Core standards, hence the name, and by the way, the feds, the federal government, they're the ones who have really not only bankrolled this, but have railroaded standards into place.
Yeah, I was just at the same place you were here. It says that few oppose these standards. It's more the political right doesn't like the fact that notwithstanding the word state is in the title, but it is really the feds who helped railroad these standards right into place. Resistors on the political left cite a range of reasons for opposing the standards, that they are shoved into place without research or pilot programs, that they are set up for national testing, that the real winners are manufacturers of test and teaching materials because they can crank out the same stuff for everybody. Just to begin a longer list, this Marion Brandy, a Washington Post published January 20th article where this retired teacher, Marion Brandy, co-authored this Common Core, has been criticized by people of all political stripes. But it goes on to say, Jennifer Davis, co-founder and president of the National Center on Time and Learning, who moderated a panel at CAP, told CNS News that teachers are truly embracing Common Core. So, even breaking it down further, from the federal government to the state implementation and money given for implementation of Common Core, down to the teachers. What teacher who wants the best for their students could even think about implementing this for their kids? What are they getting out of this? Easier curriculum to teach?
That's a great question. I think we have to really investigate the answer and follow the trail of breadcrumbs, both financial and otherwise, into what they get out of this. And I think that they're coerced, or there's a compulsion there to go along with the flow, I'm hard pressed, folks, to really understand how any teacher worth their salt can actually go along with the agenda of Common Core and everything that is attached to the Common Core agenda, because all of this is about taking away, in the end, whether we talk about Syria and Iran, the Middle East, or whether we talk about the economic situation, or whether we talk about the Super Bowl, the Illuminati symbolism in the Super Bowl, or no matter what we talk about.
I got some good ones.
In the end, though, I mean, what's the whole game plan here? The game plan is to it's almost like a Twilight Zone episode where you've got
steal, kill, and destroy.
Well, basically, yeah, but to imprison and to make everyone think alike and to agree with the agenda, to agree with the globalist agenda. This is what this is all about. By the way, I just want to interject this, and I know this is a non sequitur, folks. I'm going out. I'm kind of making a left turn. This is unscripted, but I want to tell you this. I spoke earlier today. Got a call from I'm not going to name the person, but a syndicated talk show host, very popular, and we had about a 10-minute conversation. And he said this to me. He said, I got to tell you, things are getting a little bit hot in terms of what we can and what we can't talk about. I want to be careful what I say here. He said, there will be a time, and I believe this. He said, can you imagine the Internet without the Drudge Report, for example? And I said, yeah, I suppose I could, because I don't believe that any one particular website makes the Internet, but Drudge is a good aggregator of conservative work.
There where you go to get the main headlines, with the minimal
very popular.
sin.
Right. I mean, Drudge is just right, and obviously Drudge is more conservative than liberal, although there's
spin comes from the assortment of authors and places that they aggregate from.
Right, and he said to me, that he has been noticing an increase in pressure of what he can, kind of what he can talk about. Now, of course, we had the conversation did involve, well, are you acquiescing to this pressure? Well, he's modifying his, he's modifying his topics, where he's not telling, of course, the directors what he's saying, the program directors, or what he's going to say, but he's talking about things he can say and pushing the envelope, basically. But he's saying, I can see a time where I'm no longer going to be able to say what I want to say, and then at that point I'm going to have to make a decision as to whether, what to do. For example, we had John B. Wells on Friday. What happened with John B. Wells? Well, you notice we didn't talk Friday about what the backstory. Instead, we talked about his current initiative, his current program. Why did we do that? Because that's where the information is at. But if you want to talk about the backstory, there's going to be plenty of time later to talk about the backstories, about what happened to Mr. Wells and to others, why they were, why he went on his own. I'll just say this: there's pressure right now to conform in the syndicated markets, and this is why we are not associated with any one particular. Well, it's not the only reason, but it's one reason why we're not associated with any syndication, is the fact that we don't have anyone telling us what we can and can't say. So there will be a time, and he told me this. He said, expect a time. Hey, it might be a year from now. It might be 5 from now. It might be a month from now. I don't know when. Expect a time when you won't be able to say what you're currently saying. And that's a frightening thought.
So they'll have to cut my tongue out.
Well, they can just pull the plug.
That'd be the less painful way, yeah. But no, you're right, and it's increasing in its intensity of opposition to certain types of speech and belief systems, and like you said, it's going to continue to increase until the choice is no longer there. Kind of like if you worked at Fox or MSNBC.
Exactly. I want to bring that up because before I really forgot and we got into other things. And folks, call in. I want to hear what you've got to say.
Third hour will be your calls.
Right.
661-244-9839.
9839. Come on.
9839.
I was hoping it was good stereo.
244-9839 is the number. A few pieces of news before we go to our top of the hour break. Proposed bill would force gun owners in New York to buy at least $1 million in liability insurance or forfeit their privilege to own a firearm. Anti-gun bills continue to roll in. The latest bill, introduced in the New York State Assembly by Democrat Assemblyman Felix Ortiz, seeks to force all gun owners to purchase at least $1 million in liability insurance to cover any damages caused by firearms. It would be a mandatory requirement for anyone who owns a gun, and those who refuse to comply within 30 days would have their firearms confiscated. S. 2353 states, any person in this state who shall own a firearm shall, prior to such ownership, obtain a continuously maintained policy of liability insurance in a amount not less than $1 million, specifically covering any damages resulting from any neglect or willful acts involving the use of such firearm while it is owned by such person. Failure to maintain such insurance shall result in the immediate revocation of such owner registration, license, and any other privilege to own such firearm. Well, that makes me want to move to New York, get the $1 million insurance, have my dad shoot me in the arm, and sue him. I don't know about you guys, but sounds like a quick way to make some money.
Well, I'll tell you what it is. It is just another method of gun control in the state of New York, folks. I'll tell you this right now. We as multi-state licensed investigators in the private sector, we will not. And in fact, I had just told somebody this earlier. In fact, we're not operating as in that capacity anymore. We're dedicated to doing this full time. But yeah, I hear the chuckles in the background. But that said, we will never do business in the state of New York again. And doing business in the state of New York, and especially in the city of New York, I'm sure we paid, I think in 1 year, well over $50,000 in taxes, state taxes. Well, I can promise you this: New York State will not get 1 penny of our dollars. Now, the only way I can think of beating this, of answering Cuomo, of fighting against the tyranny in New York, is not doing business in the state of New York, not stepping foot on their soil, not visiting.
Paying $1 million for their tolls.
Exactly. And we vote, or in this case, we become disobedient through our inaction or our action or whatever. But the fact is, we will never, ever do business in the state of New York. And in fact, we will make it a point to tell businesses in the state of New York that we will not do business with them because they are in the state of New York and under the tyranny of Cuomo and company. Now, if everyone did, we could make a difference. I mean, honestly, Joe, do you think if there was a majority of people who did that, could they make a difference?
Yeah, absolutely, until they were forced by decree to continue, operating inside New York, until they were chained up and made slaves in their own businesses, told to continue to work. No, but in all reality, yes.
All right.
Until they were, people came to their house and said, you open your shop back up or we're going to kill your family.
Well, or just move from the state of New York. Now, I hope that Sean Hannity, I know that he employs a number of people. I hope he moves. I hope big businesses that are located in New York move out of New York, and what is left are the very people who are going to really suffer and drown under their own draconian type of laws and policies, because certainly everything that's going on there is unconstitutional. I certainly will not support New York State personally. But this, I think this is what we have to do. I really do. I think that we, just like I'm a big proponent of civil disobedience when it comes to the TSA, which is probably why I got a message where, go ahead and try to fly somewhere next time and see what happens. But here's the thing. I believe truly that if everyone who was going to fly tomorrow said no to the radiation or detectors or no to the pat-downs and said, no, you can wand me with your magnometer, but beyond that, you're not touching me and you're not nuking me. And if everyone stood to that policy, stood up to the TSA, whether it's at airports or at stadiums or wherever, then there would be no more TSA. They'll back down. You see, think of the Super Bowl yesterday. Seattle Seahawks, they were the underdogs, as I understand it. They showed up and played. Isn't that what we have to do? We've got to show up and play our heart out. And by doing so, we can overtake or at least hold back the agenda. This is what it's all about, in my view. When my intelligence insider says we have to play our positions and occupy. Occupy doesn't mean sitting on the couch watching Gilligan's Island, but occupy means being a presence and a formidable one, and standing up to the oppression, the tyranny, and stopping to the best we can individually and perhaps collectively against the tyranny that we are being faced with. And until such time, and until sufficient numbers, and this is a numbers game too, until the majority of the people wake up and say, no, not me, not now, no longer, no further playing, we're being pushed back. So we've got to show up, we've got to play, we've got to unite, and I believe that they, meaning the TSA in this case, will back down. I believe that the government, from their draconian policies, will back down. The more people you folks, can educate, inform, and get on your side, and drag in, pull into the fold, pull into this thought process, pull into this agenda, the more people that we can get on our side, the better chances we have. Because when the events take place, whatever happens, and I think this is going to be a process. Everyone's looking for a big event to happen. I don't see it that way. I see this continual erosion as the process to the ultimate tyranny. But we've got to fight. We've got to dig in and say, not now, no more. And we've got to unite, educate, inform, and do it with not only with grace, but do it with love, and do it with the right spirit in our hearts. Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann.
Got a quick announcement for those of you who listen to Brother Marcus and Curtis's show on Blog Talk Radio Saturday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, Pine Ridge Warriors. This last Saturday, if you missed it, download the podcast. They were joined by Augusto Perez. Next Saturday, they will be joined by Greg Evenson. And the following Saturday, we will be joining them. That's the Pine Ridge Warrior show here on Blog Talk Radio at 9 p.m. on Saturday nights.
Very good, Joe. I just want to, very quickly before we go to the phones, I just got an email here from Maggie M. out of Barrow, Alaska, asking a question. Historically, when did the United States, in your opinion, stop being a Christian nation? And at first I was wondering if that was a trick question or what the question was. Folks, let me just give you a really quick history lesson that I learned. And you might want to take some notes on this, or at least remember this, because I think this is so important. First of all, is America a Christian nation? Was it set up to be? Yes, I believe it has been. Now, there has been and continues to be an all-out war waged against the constitutional validity of America being a Christian nation. Now, you've got to look at the question of whether or not America is constitutionally a Christian nation. Folks, after World War II, under FDR, the Supreme Court began to depart from the Christian heritage of America as it was established by our founding fathers. Now, I understand many were deists, and I understand, even at the most, progressives like to argue and say, Franklin, he was a deist, and he was against religion or Christianity being a part of our founding. That's not true, folks. So without going back into that aspect, let's look at the more current, more recent events. After World War II, the Supreme Court began to depart from the Christian heritage of America as it was established by our founding fathers, with their social interpretations of freedom of religion. We've all heard of that, right? Freedom of religion. Instituting pagan ideas, usurping, legislative powers to which it was not entitled, in order to bring about the socialist, the progressive changes desired by the progressive Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Now, a virtual rebellion against the Constitution and the Bill of Rights really took root in this period in which the socialist justices, Supreme Court justices, Frankfurter, Brennan, Berger, Warren, and others, became the standard bearers of revolution against the Constitution. This time in history, I believe, as do others, will go down in the history of America, in the history of the world, of how to subdue a nation without resorting to force. 1892, and I'll quickly summarize this. A Supreme Court decision was handed down in 1892. Now listen to this. Our laws and our institutions must necessarily be based upon the teachings of the Redeemer of mankind. It is impossible that it should be otherwise. And in this sense, to the extent our civilization and our institutions are emphatically Christian. Now, Justice Brewer also said so in 1905, saying that the Republic is classified among the Christian nations of the world. It is so formally declared by the Supreme Court in the case of Holy Trinity Church v. U.S. 143 U.S. 471. Folks, remember that. In fact, mark it down, because in your intellectual discourse, arguments and contentions with progressives and liberals and who knows, family members, your Uncle Ned, this might come up. Trinity Church, VUS, 143 US 471. This is 1905. Justice Brewer talking. Justice Brewer, that court, after mentioning various circumstances, added, and this is a quote, "These and many other matters, which might be noticed, add a volume of unofficial declarations to the mass of organic utterances that this is a Christian nation. We constantly speak of the nation as a Christian nation, in fact, as the leading Christian nation of the world. This popular use of the term certainly has significance. It's not a mere creation of the imagination. It's not a term of derision, but has a substantial basis, one which justifies its use." What I'm saying, folks, is the left turn really occurred under FDR, under the stacking of the Supreme Court. There is no such thing as separation of church and state in the Constitution or in the Bill of Rights. There is no doubt, folks, that our founding fathers always intended us to be a Christian nation, yet the liberal courts of the Roosevelt presidency contended otherwise. There is no such thing as federal courts or federal judges in the Constitution at all. None. Yet these people have shaped this church versus state argument. It's a fallacious argument. These politically appointed federal judges, they're not elected by us. They're not elected by we the people. Yet their courts have become, haven't they, instruments of tyranny? Instruments of oppression? I believe they have. So to answer your question, yes, the United States has always been, yes, the United States was established as a Christian nation. But where we went off the rails, at least in my view, was under FDR, in force. Before that, you had many Supreme Court justices, you had many lawmakers, you had many representatives affirming us as a Christian nation. But we went off the rails during FDR. And also remember, you can even go back to Woodrow Wilson and Mandel House espousing their form of socialism as well, if you want to go back a little bit further, but yet still be in the 20th century. So that's for you in Barrow, Alaska. Joe, go ahead.
All right. We're going to go to the phones as we have a bunch of calls and callers on hold. We're going to go to 727 first. 727, you're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. What's on your mind tonight?
Hey, you guys were talking about the Common Core. Wanted to stay on that subject. You guys hit a good topic there. Most teachers don't stand up and talk about it because they're so afraid of losing their jobs and being isolated and even fired from their jobs for speaking up about what's really going on with that Common Core. And some of them just don't have the time to look into it just because they're so swamped with paperwork and just trying to teach for students for tests, these tests, and that they have to pass, and then they have to get a grade in the school and all that goes on there. But it's definitely a psychological warfare. It's pretty much a page out of China. It's unification of all the states running the same curriculum, and it's just intertwined to the corporations to teach kids that it's all, type of like a dehumanization, and there is no God, taking the God particle out of it, and it's just evolution, and just teach for the knowledge and keep the creator out of it. And that's where it all goes wrong, because again, like you guys were just talking about, we're a Christian nation, and if you get discernment of it, and it goes right along with the Antichrist spirit, and it pretty much is a brainwash. It's a psychological warfare. It's dehumanization, and it's manipulation and ignorance, and they take over that at the youngest level. And as soon as you can program them at that level, then they have seized the mind, and they can control the mind and manipulate the atmosphere, and based on the textbooks that they read and everything else. And most people don't look into it, and most people are too afraid because they just come at you from every angle, and that's what they're afraid of losing their jobs. And sometimes in the public schools, the difference between the public schools and the private sectors is that a lot of the public schools, they're grandfathered in. They're grandfathered in. They slowly create their new laws and regulations. The private schools, they automatically have to meet all those mandates, bylaws and regulations in their curriculum in order to meet their grants and everything. And
are you a teacher?
Has a lot to do with that. Huh?
Are you a teacher?
Yeah. So I know exactly what I'm talking about
okay.
here, because I've dealt with the public school sector of it and the private school sector of it, and I see the money flow, and it's about that money and how many students are enrolled in the schools and everything. Now, the public schools, they have they're grandfathered in. They slowly force the teachers to follow the new mandates, and they have to meet them all, and they do workshops and everything else to meet the new standards for the new requirements, and that's it. The private schools, the private sector, they have to have them before they even open up the new schools, and they have to meet those mandates in order to get that money flow.
Do they
and
have
that's
to?
How that works.
Well, do the private schools? Okay, do the private schools have to adhere? Well, let me back up. Are you a teacher in the private school system or in the public school system?
I was in the private school sector, but I've worked in the public schools as well. And most teachers won't say anything or won't speak up because it's really life or death. Either like it's either you keep your job or you don't. And a lot of them are ostracized or they're looked down on if they talk about it because then they're afraid to speak up, like you were just talking about. You don't know how much longer, certain networks are going to be up because they're, ostracized and excommunicated because of the information that they're putting out based on what they're talking about on the news, because they don't want you to know. They want to control that information. That's what the CIA is based on. They're a bunch of control people. They control and manipulate everything from, Manchurian candidates. They program them, and they can all easily trigger anything right along the way because they have everything on file. That's another thing with the new thing with Common Core. They have every single document paper of you, and that from everything, and that's why they want to collect the blood type and everything else and all your information, the parents, and how many people live at home and everything. It's all, it's all control of information. They know everything about you, and then they upload it into all these computers. They have all your information there. All the old teachers have always said one thing. They said, as soon as you start collecting all this information and you're not teaching for the subject and you're teaching for the test, it's all based on controlling the flow of information and what you're being taught in school. And it's no longer about the creator. It's no longer about the subject. It's about information and controlling that information. And they take that drive for that zeal drive for it's a horrible thing, man. It's out of control, and I just see it where it's all going to come to a halting crash. And there's going to be pretty much everything you guys have been talking about. It's leading up to this big time, heads, like a civil war, pretty much. It's an information war, psychological warfare, bottom line. And if you can handle it, and if you can't, then either you burn out and you give in to the system, or you stand up, you stand your ground, and you keep fighting through it all, and you won't give in, and you'll keep talking the truth. And that's where the persecution is going to start coming in, because we're not ruled by all these fallen angels and all these principalities of this earth. We're ruled by the Creator. We have the Holy Ghost, and that's our Creator. And we're not going to be lied to and deceived. When he gives us the Holy Ghost, he gives us the boldness to stand up and speak the truth for what it is. And that's what they can't stand, because they can't control that flow of the Holy Ghost. And they can't manipulate you when you stay in Christ. And when that happens, then they can't manipulate anything. It doesn't matter how many laws, regulations they throw into your into the mix. It doesn't matter, because it's all lies.
Very well said.
And that's what it's up to.
Very well said. Coming from a teacher from both the public and private sector.
Yeah, thank you, caller, and please feel free to call anytime. We benefited from your assessments, and we thank you for them. God bless you, my friend. Moving along, we've got, let's see. Thank you, buddy.
909.
909. We're coming to you. You're up.
Well, hello.
909. Oh, hello.
Did you talked about John B. Wells? Did you know that his website was attacked this morning so much that he was unable to do his show?
No, I didn't know that. We were otherwise, really, he was, wow.
I heard it from his own mouth. He was a guest on Freedomizer with Brian Engelman and Blake Wally. And he said his tech guys confirmed that the site was being attacked. It was not normal glitches.
Well, we have some familiarity with that.
Yeah, we know that feeling, and you know, it's interesting because a lot of people and notice the timing of that. This was his debut show, following his big rollout of Caravan to Midnight, and of course it's a subscriber-based show, so to attack the first show does have a tendency to portray weakness on the part of the host or the provider. Now, that said, that's a good way to marginalize and to affect not only his message, but him as a person. So we need to stand behind John B. Wells. We need to stand behind him. We need to let it be known that we're behind him. Yeah, when you're effective, when you're talking about important things, and this was Intelligence Week, as I understand it. I think Jim Garrow was supposed to be on today with him. Ma'am, do you know if Jim Garrow was supposed to be on with him today?
Yes, and it couldn't go. It couldn't happen.
All right. Well,
right.
Wow. Okay, because Jim's going to be on he's going to be on with us on Wednesday, but we need to stand behind John B. Wells and people like him, because this is the new media. This is where you're going to be finding the truth. And thank you for telling us that. A hack to take them off the air or not to let them on the air. That's horrific.
Yeah. Well, just because I'm a contrary person, I immediately went and subscribed for a year.
There you go.
Yeah, and look, there are a few people that we really support. I mean, a few people that we endorse and support. John B. Wells is one of those people. He's a straight shooter. I got to tell you, off air, he's a real deal. On air, Izzy is on air. He'll speak the truth and he'll verify it. He's not prone to to overstate the case.
Sensationalizing.
There you go. There you go. But boy, I thank you so much for letting us know about that. I'll send John a note telling him we're concerned about him, and certainly I'm sure he would appreciate notes from other people.
We're getting information that apparently last night Dave Hodges' show was cut out. So
really?
Maybe connection or not. That's what somebody in the chat room has said. I have not confirmed that, but no reason to not believe that.
You know what, ma'am? We're making a difference. I really believe that we in this alternate media are making a difference where people are listening. I mean, not to toot our own horn, but our numbers rival some of the bigger, not some of the bigger, but some of the talk shows.
Yeah.
So, some of the biggest shows, right? So, you know what? We're making a difference, and we're threatening. We're a threat to those people who are attempting to keep us or to keep the information away from the public. So, yay us, but we've got to fight even harder. And you're a doll for supporting Mr. Wells the way you did. And that's the way we're going to prevail, by making more noise and supporting the people that we need to. So God bless you for that.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
You just have a great night. You know, people are so great. Our extended family, our audience is great. I just
couldn't have a better audience.
Oh, man, I'm telling you. And I just want to say hello to various. I can't even begin to say hello to as many people who have emailed me. Catherine, God bless you for your email. Barbara, Wiley, thank you so much. Shannon, thank you. I mean, you know, I can go on and on and on.
Yeah, just say me too. I got like 30 since the show started.
Yeah, you know, and Karen, of course. God bless you, Karen, listening live in Rome, where it's in the wee hours of the morning. You know, but everyone listening to the show and everyone calling into the show, they're so important to us, and to me anyway, and to you. I know, Joe. They know. People know. You all know, listening to the show, you know that you were born for a time like this. If you sit down in the dark, turn off the TV, and just sit in the quiet and think about things, you know that you've got a role to play. You might not know what it is right at the moment, but you know you've got a role to play in this very, very tenuous time, this very important time in history. Just want to say God bless you, and we're going to be right by your side while you're doing it.
Area code 210. We're coming to you now. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. 210.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was reading John B. Wells' website. No
problem.
Coast to Coast, in my opinion, has been compromised. They're on a syndicated AM network, and John B. Wells simply got too close to the truth, frankly. I think that was kind of why he was dismissed. But, you know, that really wasn't the reason for my call. There's a strange prophetic silence in the pulpits of America, and it's just startling. It's just deafening. The silence is about what is directly in front of this country, and I don't understand this generalized stupor that that our nation is experiencing right now. You know, it's exacerbated, I think, by this emerging love affair that we've got with marijuana. That's just descending all across the United States, and I just think we're headed towards a bridge out ahead sign, and there's a brick on the accelerator, and everybody's just oblivious to it.
Yeah, and caller, I don't know that I would myself equate the lack of urgency and truth in the church pulpits with the marijuana use, but that does have an effect on society. Okay,
I think they're different issues. Yeah, I didn't equate them directly. I think they're related in some respects, but no, there's just an ignorance and a non-desire to reach into the issues of prophetic truth at the pulpit level in America.
You just hit it, the lack of motivation, and that can be caused for a number of reasons. And one is, fear. Another one is people are comfortable. Why go into something that, and I can almost, from a pastor's mind, think, well, I don't even understand this. How can I really get into this? For the ones who, like we talked about, don't have that motivation. And then there are ones out there that are slowly learning and seeing the writing on the wall. And we'll see them come around here soon. The evidence of the church changing isn't prevalent, but it will be. But for the majority, it's the tax-exempt status, the comfortability of where they want to go, and how much do they want to learn with the Lord.
Paul McGuire's opening page of his book.
You said Paul McGuire's opening book page? I don't have that handy.
Well, he makes the statement that people will make the statement that they cannot believe that this is happening in our nation. They're just astonished. And it just seems like the pulpits are almost in rebellion about teaching some basics of biblical prophecy. And it's just startling to me by the absence of organized, teaching in the pulpits of America. You got to find it on places like, Hagmann and L.A. Marzulli and, places like that to actually get into the meat and bones of what's ahead of us.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate the vote of confidence, and it's interesting when you came on, you said you were on John B. Wells' website. I just got an email from Dennis Z. folks and caller. John B. This is interesting because John B. Wells was on Dave Hodges' show last night, and the last 2 hours when he was supposed to be on of the show did not come through, just as you said, Joe, just dead air, but the ads played. Now this morning his show was hacked. Coincidence? I think not. Caller, very good. Very good, my friend.
He had 9 minutes. He had a 9-minute video that he put tonight. Just saying, hey, look, we can't make our opening debut program today, and he mentioned the server overload, and I don't know how much of that was, users trying to ping the server versus, a hack. Maybe it was a combination of both. But I'm saying
he's got a pretty robust subscriber base. However, it's my understanding this, unlike the Obamacare website, it was built to withstand at least double the subscriber base. So, pretty interesting. But God bless you, man, for pointing that out.
Good job. Yeah, carry on, gentlemen. Great job.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Joe.
Moving right along, area code 580. You're up next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. What's on your mind tonight?
Hey, Joe and Doug. This is Margot from Oklahoma.
Hey, Margo.
Hey, I got your picture right up here with your dapper-looking husband, and I'm looking right at it.
He's a good guy. He puts up with me anyway.
There you go. What are you thinking about? What's on your radar tonight?
Well, how are you guys doing tonight?
Well, let me check. Everything looks good.
I just wanted to ask you guys, these continual executive orders, out of this administration that are coming, right and left, and I don't feel like, Congress is doing anything about it. Maybe they're afraid, maybe they've been intimidated, I don't know. But they just keep coming, and then he does this Myra, which is a big old scam. I hope that no one puts money into this thing. That'll be the first, American, Greece haircut, and it's, bonds at 2% anyway.
That's right.
But that'll be the first place.
My IRA. Just to be clear for people who are listening, that's really the nationalization of IRAs in short form.
Yeah, and it's just seems to me to be not only a setup as far as you're not going to get anything for your money. Your money's going to be at risk. Employers are going to have to spend money to comply. These sort of things. But now he's threatening immigration through a executive order. Where does this end, and when are our representatives going to protect us?
Never, to the last question.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. I see that our representatives have been compromised in one way, shape, or form. If not compromised by the purse, compromised by the NSA, and I think both are equally effective. That's just my view.
It is just so frustrating to sit and watch this in live, live television.
Oh. You got that right. Yeah, this whole the train has come off the rails. Or the car, as the last caller put it, is headed for the cliff, and there's a brick on the accelerator. the fact of the matter is we've got to do something. There's got to be a radical change quickly in order to salvage. If we are to enter into, or to I should say, if we're to avoid a civil war or something coming, some sort of societal war, we need to do something very quickly. Otherwise, I think we're headlong into a civil war or a conflict or a societal war or some sort of event that's going to be long-lasting and pretty severe, much like the Civil War was. That's my view.
You know, and you know, when they used to say the term "fearless leader," you know, I always thought, you know, from you know, outside forces. But I think we have a fearless leader now that's not afraid of us. And it's like he's laughing at us, and it's very frustrating and scary.
It is, Margot. Well, I just want to say God bless you. I want to thank you very much for checking in. You're always welcome to call. Any final thoughts, my dear?
That's it. You guys take care and stay warm.
The latter part might be a little difficult, but thank you. Thanks, do.
Margo.
God bless. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, this whole thing is just, it's out of control.
Moving on to 410. We're coming to you now. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Oh, hey, Joe and Doug. This is just me moving from Maryland. How you doing?
Good.
Awesome show. I'm learning a lot and haven't called in a while, but you know, I got some benchmarks. I'll be brief with these benchmarks. You know, since like 2008 here in Maryland, $100 million mosque has been built right outside the D.C. Beltway out there.
Oh yeah,
was that taxpayer money?
And a $500 million casino has been built in between Washington and D.C. and Anne Arundel.
That's taxpayer money.
Oh yeah, I think that's, you know, where did that money come from? And you know, in Maryland, 10,000 businesses have moved out. Small businesses, medium businesses have moved out of Maryland since Obama took office.
This is the war against the middle class. Yep, this is the war against the middle class.
And where I got that number is from my representative. I'm not just like blowing smoke. I'm saying that's the official record that came out from my Maryland State representative. So I'm just saying, just me moving, saying I'm a little worried about where things are going. And, you know, for a $100 million mosque to go in, you know, I just don't get it. Most of us are Christians, Judeo-Christian values here in Maryland, and we're not getting why this big mosque complex is going up. And this casino has brought in all kinds of drugs and prostitution here in Maryland, and that's a fact. And now the governor's taking our guns. So I'm just telling it straight.
Maryland is not exactly the best state to live in. Of course, you're not as bad as New York, but you're a close second in my view. I certainly would not be
probably top five.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
Wow.
But my reason for calling in is, well, to say, hey, these are the benchmarks that have occurred. You know, we all have values in America, and you know what? Us in Western Maryland, we're not going to let them take our guns. And in Carroll County, Maryland, the commissioners voted to say, hey, we're not going to enforce these Maryland crazy laws, and kind of like what's going on there in Florida and all those other things I'm hearing about. But I wanted to call in and thank you guys for putting these issues out there, and give you just a little spot report from the moving bunker.
All right.
So thanks
for
calling in, and
hey,
I'm going to hang up when you guys got to finish.
Well, very good, and you just keep giving us sit reps, situation reports from your position in the occupied territory of Maryland. We really appreciate that.
God bless you guys.
Thank you so much. God bless, man. I just want to, Joe, I want to point something out here real quick. We were talking about one of the callers was saying about the silence of the pulpits. Folks, I think this is really important to understand where this comes from. If there is no separation of church and state that prohibits churches from exercising all of their freedoms and influence in the public square, which there isn't, where did this gag rule, why are the churches silent? And let me just take you down real quick to give you some history on this, because, again, I think this is important. You go back to 1954. Lyndon B. Johnson, senator from Texas. He was really hacked off at some churches who opposed him. He thought he would teach them a lesson by legislating a gag rule for them and every other church in America. He offered an amendment that permanently extended the reach of the IRS into our nation's churches, into the parachurches, in nonprofits. The amendment was accepted unanimously without debate. Now, since that time, the IRS has turned the 501c3 code section on its head in an attempt to punish pastors for communicating the principles of their faith during an election period. You got to go back. You got to look at what LBJ did, for the reasons he did them, and you'll see the birthing of the IRS teeth against the pulpits. Now, is that an excuse, or is that a reason? No, not a good reason. Is that an excuse? I guess, you know what they say about excuses. Let's just keep in mind.
No, I don't. Can you?
Yeah. Let's just keep this in mind. In this case, for every Goliath, God does have a David. And for every Calvary's cross, God has a Christ Jesus. So, look, we've got to stand up. We've got to say no more. And but just think about that. Go back in history and look at what LBJ did. And you think he was you think he was bad as president? Well, look at what he did as senator. He created an amendment and put the 501c3 code section on its head in an attempt to punish pastors who would not support him in his election bid. There you go. A little history for you.
All right, we're going to move on to area code 704. Thanks for holding. You're up next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. 704. 704 going once.
In case you're dyslexic, it'd be 407.
Nope, I'm seeing it correctly. 704.
No, I was talking to the caller.
No. Well, they're not reading it, so I don't think that works.
No, that's true.
All right, we're going to move on to 308. 308 area code. You're up next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hey, Joe. Doug.
Good evening.
God bless you both. This is Charlie in the middle of the country.
Hey, Charlie, in the middle of the country.
I called you earlier, a couple months ago, on Franklin's cover-up and John McCain.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And I was the one that said that the UN building should be pushed in the ocean.
Yeah.
But tonight you're talking about the Common Core. Have you ever heard of Phyllis Schlafly?
Yep.
She would be a good one to get on your program because she's been around forever. I've listened to her back in the 80s and the 90s, and back then they called it outcome-based education.
You're exactly right.
Back then we knew about the 2 + 2 = 5. Now, I'd like to ask you how you can explain to a kid that 2 + 2 = 5. But they say that's close enough, so you pass. But
you've got to explain to the child that everything is relative and everything is subjective. Right. It's kind of like not keeping score at Little League games. Everybody's
so angry at that.
Everybody's a winner.
But if you remember, that's when they took out musical chairs out of the school, where one kid had to fail.
Good point.
And anything related to anything like that, because they didn't want that kid, any kids to fail. And that's not preparing kids for the outside world, because you're not going to get every job you apply for. You're not going to keep every job you apply for. It's not always going to go your way. And
Wait
so
that is a right-wing fringe talking point if I've ever heard one. Everybody gets a job who goes to college.
Caller, I think you're being racist as well.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, because I'm proud to be a terrorist against tyranny, suppression, and I've told you that before. But
no, you're right. You're right.
God love you, my friend.
But I just wanted that point brought up. Now, did you hear who was on Alex Jones' show today?
No.
No, I'll say no too. Who was?
Okay. If you would have listened to the all of the Super Bowl last night and afterward, they were interviewing the player of the game. He was a defensive player on the the Seahawks team. Anyway, when he got done, there was a kid that had worked his way into the Super Bowl without a ticket, without any kind of, he went through all 5 checkpoints or gates. He rode the train, he rode the bus, he got in, and he got in the press box, and he picked up the microphone right after the guy put it down, and he said 9/11 was an inside job. It needs to be reinvestigated. It was your government that did it.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And so Alex Jones got a hold of him and interviewed him on the show today.
So he didn't have a ticket?
No, he didn't have a ticket. He just went on. He got on the bus by saying he was late for work and he worked at the stadium, and that's what he kept saying all the time. So he broke through the TSA, the Highway Patrol, whoever security was there. He got all the way in, and then he got the microphone and made that statement. And they're going crazy. All of the media, all the media are trying to get a hold of him, and you got to listen to it. It's great.
You're going to have to check him out. You're going to have to check Alex out. Very interesting, the fact that he could circumvent the best security in the world, and, of course, the snipers hiding in the alcoves of the MetLife Stadium. Interesting. Caller, thanks for your call, my friend. God bless you. Man,
yeah, thanks for sharing
something. That. Yeah, indeed. All right.
Yeah, I just want to let you know that because that's a good point. Do keep up the good work. And I did try to get a hold of, get on the Dave Hodges show last night, and I couldn't get through. I mean, I didn't. It was off. So
yeah, I'll be talking to Dave sometime, either if not after the show, then first thing in the morning to find out what's going on and to. We've got other things to talk about. I know that he's been under extreme attack. Believe me, and by the way, folks, he's thanked. He wanted to convey his thanks to each of you who sent him notes of encouragement. But yeah, he's been under the gun tremendously in many ways. But this just adds to all of that. And you know what? We just never know when our plug might be pulled or our chain might be yanked, if not for for a long term, but just for a short period. Who knows? The caller, thank you. God bless.
Can I make one
more
point?
Go ahead. Sure, why not? Go ahead.
Joe, you might want to lift this up, but did you ever hear of the first padlock church in America?
No, I have not.
Well, punch it in. Just first padlock church in America, and it was in Louisville, Nebraska. And I was there the night they padlocked it. And they carried 5 or 6 of the fathers that had kids in the church school there, and the pastor was Dr. Everett Sullivan, and he was fighting because the Nebraska wanted to have all church school teachers certified by the state.
And the pastor went to jail.
And he was exiled out of Nebraska until the case was. He won his case, and they didn't pass that. So he didn't want to take over a 501c3 either. Every time that they take over and become a 501c3, then you're under jurisdiction of the state, and you have to have certified teachers. Now, once you have certified teachers and become under the jurisdiction of the state, you have to use their curriculum. And he didn't want that because then you can't have Bible study. You can't have, Bible class or anything. And just look it up and investigate it. It's pretty interesting. I'll get off now and listen to the program. And God bless both of you.
Thanks for sharing that, caller. I see a few good books written about this story, and I see one on Amazon paperback here for $1.59. I'm going to have to order this and check it out.
I was there that night that happened, and they literally, 6 fathers sat on the pulpit floor and crossed their legs Indian style, and the highway patrol picked them up 2 highway patrolmen picked each one up by their arms and carried them out to the cars and took them to jail, and then turned around and put a chain through the door and padlocked the church until it could be gone to the legislature and the court. And over 300 ministers and pastors came into that town from all over the country to testify for Dr. Sullivan and against having certified teachers. Because my mom and dad fed them and taxied them to the airports and everything.
Fantastic information, and of course a first-hand account. That's incredible. But that just goes to show you the power of the black robes in this country. Just to really kind of put an exclamation point on your point here. Think about this, for example. If you give people, judges, absolute power to do evil, they're going to use it unchallenged. Judges have done some great evil, including that of which you speak. But if you think about this, how they've been silencing, ostracizing, criminalizing those with whom they disagree, think about this. Verbal prayer offered in school is unconstitutional, even if that prayer is both voluntary and denominationally neutral. That was decided back in 1962 and also reaffirmed in 1971. If a student prays over his lunch, for example, it is unconstitutional for him to pray out loud. 1965. I could go on and on and on. Right now, we're living in the equivalent of a communist country, and that's been the objective, and it's just incredible.
Right.
So, it's just amazing.
My mom taught in the public school system for 30 years, and she retired early because of she saw what was happening and coming down the pike. And so you talked about why the preachers aren't forcing and doing what they should be doing on the pulpit. It's because they're under state control and they're being brainwashed. All the new preachers that are coming up are being brainwashed, just like the teachers on this Common Core education.
Oh, man, it's unbelievable. Well, God bless you. Thank you, my friend, for the information which you have imparted. It's wow.
With that,
God bless you, my friend. Yeah, we're at the close of the program. Thank you very much, my friend. Folks, you've just completed another investment of 3 hours of your time, and we thank you for that. We hope we've left you better, more informed than when you arrived. We hope we've given you some information that will be of use, actionable intelligence, which you can use in your discourse with your friends, your family, your peers.